Floods, earthquakes, volcanoes, meteorites, and on we go. Living in the shadow of these kinds of catastrophes is just part of the deal that comes with being alive on this planet. Being aware of the dangers that are around us all of the time. We must prepare for the worst as much as we are capable, then somehow go on living our lives. But not all the disasters that we face as fully paid up members of the human race are on the scale of an Armageddon or an apocalypse. Disasters in the air and misfortunes at sea grab our attention because of the usually large number of fatalities involved. However much we might think we have mastered the elements, nature still wins. And it's not even necessary to leave dry land. Rail journeys and even just getting in your car can be fraught with disaster. That's the focus for this installment of Desperate Hours, road and rail disasters. So buckle up, it's going to be a bumpy ride. Our journey begins in Santiago de Compostela, a place of pilgrimage. It is the capital of Galicia, a semi-independent region of Spain. It's a picturesque sort of place, and more so in the summer when the Santiago de Compostela festival takes place. It was July 24, 2013, on the eve of this festival of European arts and culture, when disaster struck.
No sé, impacta bastante. Además, siendo las fiestas es lo que más impacta.
Anyone who saw the CCTV footage will never be able to forget it. The silver streak of a train rounding a corner, then somehow skidding off the tracks and smashing into a sidewall. The train was packed with holidaymakers on their way into the town for the festival, when it went careering off its tracks and smashed into an adjacent wall of a highway underpass. 79 people were killed. Once the visceral shock of the footage fades, questions come up pretty fast. Like, why did the driver allow the train to go so fast? An inquiry into the accident revealed that the passenger train cornered the so-called Anguar curve at a top speed of 195 kilometers per hour. That's a whopping 115 kilometers over the established speed limit. The engine driver had failed to heed and in fact totally ignored the speed restrictions. The Spanish Railway Accident Investigation Commission later reported that the driver took a call from the controller which lasted 1 minute and 40 seconds, and it appears they were not discussing the speed limit. Their minds were on other things. While the two men chatted blithely away, the train traversed 5.5 kilometers closer to the spot where it crashed. So the driver had ample time to wake up and apply the brakes in time. But by the time he realized, it was way too late. The train was still doing about 180 kilometers an hour when it made impact. The highway can be just as risky a proposition as a railroad. Exhibit A. It is around 6:30 on a Saturday morning, March the 22nd, 2014, on the highway to Karachi, Pakistan. A passenger bus bound for Karachi collides with a truck coming the other way. The truck driver had swerved to avoid sliding into a ditch, miscalculated, and smashed into the bus. It didn't help matters that the bus was loaded with smuggled oil drums, or that the bus was carrying petrol and diesel oil cans on its rooftop. When they collided, it was a nightmare. The fierce blaze soon set fire to another bus, creating a thick cloud of black smoke which could be seen from miles and miles away. The pile-up between two buses and two trucks traveling along the coastal highway killed around 40 people, with 30 or more people injured. As usually happens in cases of this sort, emergency services stepped in to douse the smouldering wreckage scattered along the roadside. Others looked for survivors amidst the carnage and debris. The bodies of the deceased were often charred beyond recognition. The survivors were taken to hospital as soon as could be arranged. The biggest ever road and rail accidents are next on Desperate Hours. We began this episode by saying that road accidents couldn't quite measure up to the disasters in the air, or certainly natural phenomena like volcanoes and earthquakes. When it comes to the number of casualties, that is. Millions may die on the roads every year, but they rarely do so more than a few at a time. The exceptions, however, are heartbreaking. It's not really surprising that the really big pile-ups happen in developing countries. This crash in Nigeria in 2000 killed 96 people in one fell swoop.
By eyewitnesses that there is a head-on collision between this tanker and a Toyota Corolla. Close.
After it passed through a police checkpoint ahead of a toll bridge, the brakes on an oil tanker truck suddenly failed. The truck slammed into the cars and spilled fuel everywhere, which ignited on impact. The ensuing blaze engulfed everything inside a 500-meter radius, destroying at least 15 cars. 2 of those cars had been on their way to a wedding, as this clearly distraught man described.
Only one man survived in the second Mercedes. Only the husband survived, the wife, the children, all of them perished.
HIV does not kill as much as road traffic incidents is taken on a daily basis. on Nigerian road will lose on average 100 lives daily.
This was far from the only major pile-up in Nigeria that year, but it was the worst. But while we are discussing grim statistics, this is one that remains hard to top. Forget Britain's 19th century industrial revolution or the Pacific Railroad in the days of the Old West. The deadliest railroad accident of all time happened in the early years of this century. December 26, 2004. The Indian Ocean tsunami kills 140,000 people within the space of a few hours, devastating huge swathes of Indonesia, Thailand, India, and Sri Lanka. In Sri Lanka, a passenger train called Queen of the Sea had just pulled into a coastal railway line station near the beach resort town of HIKKADUWA when the unthinkable occurred. Two enormous waves flooded the coastline, uprooting the railway tracks and tipping over the train, toppling railway carriages on their side, like toy train set pieces. The 8 carriages had been overloaded with passengers, and when the carriages flooded, they really didn't stand a chance. Anyone in the vicinity still alive scrambled to stay ahead of the iron chassis of the train, which wreaked destruction in its path. Even amidst the scale of the 2004 tsunami, the Queen of the Sea rail catastrophe stands out. 1,700 people were killed. But it's not necessary for anything as lethal as a tsunami to take place for driving to be an occasionally perilous operation. All it takes, sometimes, is a little fog. In 1977, when 11 people died on the AUTOSTRADA del Sol, the so-called motorway of the sun that runs fast between Milan and Naples, fog was the cause of the catastrophe. When a small passenger car braked sharply as it encountered a thick cloud of fog, it in turn was hit from behind by an oncoming vehicle. Nobody was hurt, but when the drivers got out to inspect the damage, other vehicles started running into them. Some 22 vehicles were involved in the crash, and more tragically, 11 people were killed. One of the worst accidents in the long history of British Rail also happened in thick fog.
A steam train from London to Ramsgate crashed into the rear of an electric train to Hayes, which was stationary between St John's and Lewisham stations.
The collision caused the bridge overhead to collapse onto the last coach of the steam train. All in all, 90 people were killed. There was an inquiry into the incident. Yes, they had inquiries back in those days as well. It turned out the engine driver had failed to slow down, even after 2 cautionary signals. He only applied the brakes when the so-called fireman yelled to tell him the train was on a collision course. But by then, it was too late. The driver of the Ramsgate-bound train was put on trial for manslaughter charges, but eventually acquitted after 2 separate trials. In the case of automobile pile-ups, knowing who to blame isn't always so straightforward.
Also wir sind also zum Stillstand gekommen, man denkt sich, nur ist es ein Stau.
In 2008, in a motorway pile-up involving 100 vehicles, which killed 1 person and injured 37 others, many quite seriously, who then was responsible? The incident took place in Austria on the A1 motorway linking Vienna with Salzburg. All that week, ice and freezing temperatures had been responsible for numerous auto accidents in Central Europe.
Ich will das Auto nicht mehr wegschieben und dann denkt man an gar nichts mehr, dann will man nur mehr weg. Gell? Dann bin ich, also da ist mein Auto, dann bin ich auf den Bahnenstreifen rausgefahren und dann, ja, dann ist alles schnell gegangen. Und dann habe ich mit dem Rückspiegel noch gesehen, wie die LKWs nachgerutscht sind.
The general consensus after the accident was that the pile-up was caused by a holiday bus. With foul weather continuing, rescue choppers and ambulances had trouble reaching the crash site. Many survivors had to be cut free from the wreckage. The specifics make chilling viewing, but the statistics seem to leave people cold. What else can explain the very human eagerness to get behind the wheel? Because according to the Association for Safe International Road Travel, around 1.3 million people are killed in automotive accidents every year. That's over 3,200 people each day. And don't forget the additional 20 million plus injured or disabled every year. We have been looking at some of the more dramatic car crashes and pile-ups of our time, but big or small, they are recurring themes in auto accidents. Some studies point to distracted driving, such as when motorists talk on the phone, as the #1 cause of accidents on the road. Unsurprisingly, speeding is right up there, as is driving drunk or under the influence. Car accidents with perfectly roadworthy vehicles often occur in heavy rain when cars spin out of control, braking or swerving on slick and treacherous surfaces. As well as rain, natural phenomena such as high winds, fog, ice and snow can make the roads a dangerous place to be. Potholes, of course, and even animal crossings can be hazardous. But it's human recklessness or error that is still the root cause of the vast majority of fatal car crashes. Running red lights and stop signs, driving carelessly at night, unsafe lane changes, making improper turns all contribute to the astonishing number of deaths on the road every year. It's a figure that doesn't look like it will get any smaller anytime soon. It has been estimated that road accidents cost low and middle-income countries some $65 billion a year, which is more than the amount they receive in aid. Nine in every 10 deaths on the road take place in so-called developing countries. Yet these countries account for less than half of the world's vehicles. A case in point, April 13, 2014, near the town of Ciudad Ila in the Gulf state of Veracruz, Mexico. A passenger bus en route to Mexico City slams into a broken-down truck and bursts into flames. The 3-axle bus was rolling down the highway when it struck a 5-axle tractor trailer, which had broken down by the roadside. 4 people survived the crash, which occurred shortly after midnight. The incident prompted discussion about road safety and what to do about abandoned vehicles in future to avoid such collisions.
Pero sí, nos preocupa mucho y nos ocupa, y las medidas vamos a tomar medidas muy fuertes en cuanto a la revisión de ese tipo de transporte por parte de policías federales.
A statement from the State Civil Defense Agency said most of those killed were local business people. The agency's emergency director said the victims burned to death inside the bus, which was so badly charred that its tires melted. And as you might assume from that, those killed in the inferno were also burned to a crisp. It was impossible to identify most of the victims due to their condition, so DNA tests were the only way to be sure. But if you think commuting back and forth to work by train is without its perils, think again. An Amtrak train was headed to New York City with 238 passengers on board. It derailed in Philadelphia on the night of Wednesday, May 13, 2015. Then something went wrong with train 188, a Northeast regional passenger and freight train.
And suddenly the train comes to a complete deceleration, so as if someone has slammed the brake.
Paul Chung, a reporter for Associated Press, who happened to be traveling on train 188 that evening, described the accident as only an eyewitness with a press pass could.
And once I got out of the train, I could see the wreckage where it was like in a giant C shape, and I was in the back of the train, and the front of the train looked all mangled up, just piles of metals. And in the middle of the car, you could see the car kind of flip to the side, and I saw people climbing up from the windows, rescuing themselves.
The nighttime crash mangled the front of the train, killing 5 people and injuring several more. Passengers tried to escape through the windows of the carriages, which tipped over on their side. Police at the crash site in Port Richmond, a blue-collar neighborhood, told people to back away from the train. They pleaded with onlookers and the so-called rubberneckers, who seemed to be drawn to the scene of any accident. Roads all around the crash site were blocked off. Waves of firefighters worked throughout the night. Medics carried away the gravely injured on stretchers. Others were put on city buses. Some even managed to walk away from the devastation. Authorities said they had no idea what had caused the train wreck, which left rail cars mangled, ripped open, and upside down on their sides. The world can be a very dangerous place. Not only is there the ever-present threat of natural disasters, but the damage mankind is quite capable of inflicting on himself. Even ordinary everyday activities like driving the car or taking the train to work can be fraught with danger. So safety first. Buckle up, look to your left and right, drive carefully and ride safely. Until the next installment of Desperate Hours.